Locked On Podcast Network presents Locked On Sports Today.
With the Dodgers and Phillies scuffling, is the best team in the National League the Milwaukee Brewers? Also, the Patriots begin a new chapter, and the rumored trade of Brandon Aiyuk to Pittsburgh seems out of character for the Steelers. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDON for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply.
I'm Peter Bukowski, starting your day with the can't-miss stories and biggest debates in sports. You're Locked On Sports Today.
Searching all major sports. Found.
Let's start with the biggest story.
After a 16-7 beatdown of the Atlanta Braves, the Milwaukee Brewers get out the brooms. They sweep Atlanta. They now have the third best run differential in Major League Baseball, the second best run differential in the National League. And while the Phillies and the Dodgers are wandering in the desert a little bit here in mid-August, the Milwaukee Brewers, thanks in part to Jackson Churio, are rounding into form. Chuck Freeman, always in form, our host over at Locked On Brewers. And Chuck, we talked a couple weeks ago, and it was sort of, the Brewers with this nice story. They trade their ace and they still managed to do all of this here. Now, all of a sudden, they look like they have a real chance in the National League.
Yeah, I've been saying this for the last couple of weeks. Let's see if we could try to run down the Dodgers, maybe the Phillies. Sounded like a pipe dream at one point, but going into, today's games, the Brewers were tied in the loss column with the Dodgers for that second seed. And there's so many things that can benefit from getting that first round wild card bye. But yeah, I'll tell you, Peter, after Sunday's game, they had lost 6 of 9. They got beat 2 of 3 this past week by Washington.
Right.
And, I was thinking, okay, is this it? Are the injuries, everything catching up to these guys? And then they turned right around. And I was just like, just take 2 or 3. If you could take 2 or 3, and I even thought that might have been a pipe dream. I didn't see this offensive explosion. They just an amazing 3 days in Atlanta.
So I mentioned Jackson Churio. He is now slashing 341, 386, and 549 with an OPS approaching 1,000 right now. He has been unbelievable since June 2nd. Give us a little context of how this came to be, because I'm not sure that's a name, unless you're a fantasy baseball person, that you probably had on your radar early in the season. And right now, like if we held all-star balloting again right now, he'd be an all-star.
Oh, of course, without question. And Peter, as you know, smaller markets got to pay that tax. They almost got to prove themselves when they get players like this, because he's playing in New York. You might hear about him, but Jackson he went through a tough stretch early in the season, and when he first got, obviously he was 20 years old, and it was like, well, are they going to send him down to AAA and try to figure a few things out? No, they kept him on the parent team, and he had to go through some tough love. He was pinch hit for at one point, and he was frustrated at that. But as you mentioned, since early June, just has turned it around. He's not only been one of the best players on this team, but one of the best players, I think, Peter, in the National League with what he's done. He's put himself, I think, in the conversation for Rookie of the Year based on what he's done here the last 2 months. You wouldn't have said that through the first 2 months of the season, but here we are, and the 20-year-old kid is is probably the best offensive player on this team right now.
Yeah, and look, we've seen Brewers teams led by young players in the past. I mean, we can think of, those Ryan Braun, Prince Fielder, Ricky Weeks teams. I mean, Ryan Braun was the Rookie of the Year, and they were a playoff team. But in the postseason, we know it's going to come down to the starting pitching. I mentioned the trade. That's going to be the question for this team. Is the pitching good enough in the postseason? What do you see there right now with the Brewers' arms?
Well, the problem with the Brewers is, Peter, they lack an ace. And you could call Freddie Peralta the ace of the staff. He is by default. He's the number 1 starter. Colin Ray's 10-3 on the season, the number 2 guy. But they lack a Corbin Burns at the top of that rotation, a guy a legitimate number 1 stud at the top of the rotation. And when you get into the postseason, I think that's it. My problem too is that, can this team hit the postseason? I feel like that's always been the problem. Well, the pitching has been fine. It's just they get in some of these games in the postseason where they just can't get out of their own way offensively. But so far, I think the pitching has been fine. The bullpen has been terrific. Now they got to get McGill back, and Devin Williams is still working his way back. But you look at that bullpen. That bullpen is among the best in baseball. If they can get just 5 or 6 innings out of that starter. But I think ultimately, man, I think down the road, you'd like to say, I said this on my podcast last night, if you can get a number 1 starter somewhere down the road, but it's going to cost money. And teams in small markets just don't go out and buy themselves starting pitching like that.
Yeah, you mentioned Devin Williams. I would love an update for our listeners on him. But what's remarkable, and I was just joking with our producer about this before we came on, they trade Hader last year. And everyone's going, what is happening? Why are they doing this? And then you have Devin Williams, who is this really promising heir apparent, and then he gets hurt, and you still put together one of the best bullpens in baseball. How are they doing it?
They get the cast off Trevor McGill. He was just floundering around from a couple of different teams. Minnesota didn't want him anymore. He comes in and he's got 18, 19 saves, but he got hurt. I was looking at it, man, they had a nice 1-2 combination there with McGill and Devin Williams. Now McGill's going to hopefully come off the injured list here very soon, but a lot of it's bullpen by committee. There's some guys in that bullpen who are holding their own. There's a few others. Piamps has put it together as of late after going through a little bit of a slump. But I think in particular in that back end, when they get McGill back, and they're going to be really, really tough. They are right now, but they're even going to be better once they have that 1-2 punch of the bullpen.
Yeah, in the postseason, pitching is not quite as big a deal if you can shorten the game. If you can get to that 6th inning, that 7th inning, and even just figure it out. Now with the way that they handle some of these bullpen playoff games, I mean, if you're a team that has a good bullpen, maybe you can mitigate some of that if you're the Brewers, if they have all these arms healthy. Chuck, appreciate the time, man.
Are you?
Stay up to date all year on the Milwaukee Brewers by subscribing to Locked On Sports Today and Locked On Brewers on your favorite podcast app and on YouTube. Thanks for making Locked On Sports Today your first listen. Coming up, the Patriots began a new era. Before we get to that, Team USA is one step closer to the ultimate goal, while Noah Lyles just missed out on his. Game Time makes getting to the ballpark even faster and easier. Prices on the Game Time app actually go down the closer it gets to first pitch. With killer last-minute deals, all-in prices, and their best price guarantee, Game Time takes the guesswork out of buying tickets. They're obsessed with finding ways to help you save money on tickets. Game Time has deals on tickets right up to the start of the event and even an hour after it starts. It's the place to find last-minute seats. Find exclusive flash deals and sponsored deals on tickets for football, basketball, baseball, concerts, comedy, theater, and more. And the Game Time guarantee means you'll always get the best price. If you find tickets in the same section and row for less, Game Time will credit you 110% of the difference. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the free app, and new users can get $20 off their first purchase with code Locked On. Terms apply. That's code Locked On for $20 off your first purchase with Game Time. Download the Game Time app today. Last minute tickets, the lowest price guaranteed. If you're catching this episode after hearing your favorite Locked On show, make sure to subscribe to Locked On Sports Today on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts so you never miss an episode. Team USA completed an emotional comeback to beat Serbia and advance to the gold medal game. Steph Curry was vintage in his performance as he poured in 36 while shooting 9 of 14 from the three-point line. The U.S. trailed Serbia by as much as 15 late in the third quarter. LeBron James joined Steph to lead the comeback charge as James notched a triple-double with 16, 12, and 10. Team USA will now face France for the gold as the host nation took down Germany earlier on Thursday. On the Olympic track, Noah Lyles tried for gold in the 200-meter after winning gold in the 100-meter, but came up short. Lyles finished with the bronze, while Letzi Tabago from Botswana won gold. It is the first gold medal ever for Botswana. Lyles' American teammate Kenny Bednarek took home silver. It was revealed after the race, though, that Lyles has a good reason. He tested positive for COVID on Tuesday morning. He quarantined in a nearby hotel and was experiencing symptoms, but still wanted to compete. And apparently, the IOC, they let him. In baseball news, the Chicago White Sox finally fired manager Pedro Grifol and elevated Grady Sizemore to interim boss.
Just an absolute train wreck. I mean, he was in over his head from day one as he allowed the clubhouse to become even more toxic. And the Sox have known nothing but bad since he was hired. This was a man who on the day he was hired said the style of baseball that they were going to play was to be, I'll just say appropriately G-rated, to kick the opponent's rear end every night. Well, it turns out it was the Sox who got their butts kicked in every night. And this year's team was supposed to play, and he actually created a very lame acronym out of the word FAST. According to Pedro, they were supposed to play fearless, aggressive, selfless, and technically sound. Well, the Sox have the worst defense and offense. They're very aggressive at blowing leads. And Pedro was aggressive at sounding like an idiot whenever he spoke to the media. I mean, this guy actually thought he was a good manager. And I get you got to be confident. But he kept saying, I'm good at this job, despite his record saying, no, you're not.
And speaking of the Brewers, they obliterated the Braves.
Boy, what has gotten into these guys? They've lost 6 of their last 8 series. They go to Atlanta, and the Braves are in the thick of the wild card chase, and then they become the bashing Brewers. 16 runs on top of the 8 yesterday and the 10 the day before, and they just torched the Braves pitching. 6 homers today. And Jackson Chourio, man, if this guy should not be getting some more of the spotlight. 2 more home runs today. The guy has been amazing. Yeah, this offense is just hard to figure out because most of the time, they don't do much. And then they go on today and they go yesterday and then Tuesday night, and they just go on a rampage against the Braves. Can't wait for the episode later on tonight. Got the Reds coming in town for this weekend. Huge, long homestand coming up. We'll get to all that coming up. Locked On Brewers will drop a little bit later on tonight. Please hit the subscribe button here. We'll talk to you a little bit later on, everybody.
And on the football fields, away from the baseball field, the Colts suffered a blow to their offense.
The Indianapolis Colts got back after it for day 9 at training camp today, but unfortunately the action on the field was overshadowed by an injury on it. Josh Downs, stud slot receiver going into his second year, he suffered what is reported to be a high ankle sprain. During 7-on-7s, he was tackled by Nick Cross and was basically carried off the field afterward in clear pain. Anthony Richardson, Alec Pierce, Michael Pittman Jr. went back there to the tent to check on him right after. And the ankle sprain, the high ankle sprain, is supposed to keep him out anywhere from 4 to 6 weeks, which puts his week 1 status in question. Now, the most direct beneficiary of this is Anthony Gould. He immediately slotted in to that slot receiver position after Downs was hurt. But we've got much more on that on Locked On Colts on YouTube and wherever you listen to podcasts.
The Patriots played their first preseason game under a new regime and a new potential star quarterback. Locked On Patriots host Mike Debate has more.
And Patriots fans, today we take you back to January 2nd, 2000. Yeah, going back in the Belichickian time machine, that was the last time the New England Patriots took the field for a preseason game or a regular season game without Bill Belichick on the sidelines. But a new era was born in New England, a night of firsts on what was kind of a dreary weather evening in Foxborough. Not a robust crowd on hand for this one, but a lot of factors involved in that. But all of you dedicated Foxborough faithful were in your seats to help cheer on the New England Patriots as they usher in a new era. And they did just that. Gerard Mayo's head coaching debut, the Patriots gained a 17-3 victory over the Carolina Panthers on Thursday night at Gillette Stadium. And here to break it all down is our good friend, the legend himself, the only man that could join me post-game here with the lucid, cohesive wisdom and counsel we all need right now, the legend himself, Thomas Murphy. Thank you for coming to me in friendship here post-game, Don Murph.
Happy to be here, bud. Happy to be here. I was glad I wasn't in the stadium. It was kind of drizzly and disgusting out there, and nobody got what they wanted.
Yeah, the boos that rained down from the faithful that were in attendance tonight in Foxborough in the first quarter. A lot of confusion on that on social media. I don't think they were directed at Bailey Zappi. I think it was directed at the coaching staff that wanted to see more of the number 3 overall pick. You saw Drake May for one series. We're going to get into that in just a moment. But, Murph, a historic night at Foxborough, regardless of the attendance or regardless of the weather. The first time in 24 years that Bill Belichick was not on the sidelines. Gerard Mayo definitely putting his own stamp on this team. I know preseason games don't count for anything in the standings, and in the grand scheme of things, they don't count for a whole lot more. But when you can walk away from the field in your debut, regardless of what that debut is, with a win, yeah, you're going to be all smiles, and the Patriots should be all smiles at this point. The 17-3 victory, Murph, some bright spots, some areas that the Patriots clearly need to work on, but if we're being honest, all eyes were on Drake May, and Patriots fans got a chance to see Drake take the field in the second offensive series for the Patriots. Jacoby Brissett starting the game. But as soon as the number 3 overall pick in April's draft came in, a little bit of a roar came from the crowd. You started to hear them come alive because they were excited to see the new number 10 in town. And Drake completed 2 of 3 of his passes for 19 yards, both of his completions coming on screen passes. The only misfire sailed a bit high. It was off a play action. Did hit Jalen Reagor in the hands. That is a somewhat catchable ball, but if I'm being honest, it was a little bit on the high side.
If you can touch it, you can catch it.
Yeah,
Murphy's
exactly. Absolutely. And I knew you were going to side with me on that. But bottom line, I thought a decent debut. I just think that from Patriots fans' perspectives, I think they wanted to see a little more from the rookie quarterback at this point. What were your thoughts on Drake May and his debut here?
Well, my thoughts were I'm glad I didn't blink. I'm glad I didn't get up to go refill the Pepsi. I'm glad I'm glad he got out of there in one piece. And for everybody that's out there thinking, well, why did he only get 1 series? It's because they didn't want to get the kid killed. All right. He went out there with the first team offensive line. And when they wanted them to come out, they were coming out. The Patriots can't afford to lose an offensive lineman right now. Never mind their future franchise quarterback. That's why, that's why it went this way. That was the plan. That's what Gerard Mayo said after the game, that Brissett was going to get a series, and then May was going to get a series, and then the one guy that we don't give a damn about, we're going to let you see a lot, and that was Bailey Zappi.
Stay up to date on the New England Patriots all year long by subscribing to Locked On Sports Today and Locked On Patriots on your favorite podcast app and on YouTube. Coming up, this whole Brandon Aiyuk to Pittsburgh soon thing doesn't make sense, or at least doesn't fit what we know about the Steelers. The Steelers are reported to be acquiring Brandon Aiyuk, or at least close to acquiring Brandon Aiyuk from the 49ers. That's supposed to happen any day now. But as Locked On NFL host Alex Clancy tells Tyler Rowland, this is out of character for Pittsburgh.
This doesn't seem very Pittsburgh Steeler-like.
It does.
They underpay everybody, like forever. It's been the Patriots. It's the culture. Look at the rings. You come and be part of
wide receiver.
Yeah, well, and for a long time, it's like, for a wide receiver, it's like outside of Antonio Brown, you Hines Ward and Emmanuel Sanders was good there for a while. It's like this hasn't been wide receiver for a long time. So it's like, what is going? It doesn't make sense. Like, so when we talk to them, like, go to Washington, they're going to huck it. You're going to have an impact there. It's like they're going to run the ball here.
And the connection with Jay Daniels.
Like, he thinks that his target share is bad in San Francisco. He's going to be the third option, most likely, outside of Najee Harris and Jalen Warren on this team. And then you have George Pickens, and they drafted Calvin Austin. Like, this isn't. The one thing I don't understand is why Pittsburgh would change their stripes, so to speak, now. That's the one thing that doesn't really resonate with me after decades and decades of not doing something like this.
It may be out of character for Pittsburgh because this doesn't happen. Players don't force their way to Pittsburgh. The Steelers don't trade first-round picks for star receivers because star receivers don't say, you better trade me to Pittsburgh. First of all, this isn't the NBA. Stars generally don't do this. Certainly not quarterbacks, or certainly not anyone but a quarterback. We just saw Aaron Rodgers do it, say, it's the Jets, trade me to the Jets. This is not normally how things work. Now, the Steelers, they're a quality organization for a reason. When they have an opportunity to add a top 8, top 10 receiver, they're going to explore it. Of course they are. Does it make sense that Brandon Aiyuk wants to go there? No, I'm sure they were just as surprised that this is where they landed. Justin Fields, Russell Wilson doesn't exactly inspire confidence. George Pickens already there as your number 1 receiver, going to eat into your targets. Why exactly does Brandon Aiyuk want to go there other than Mike Tomlin? And the answer might be not any more complicated than it's Mike Tomlin, and it's a stable organization. And adding Brandon Aiyuk is not going to increase the instability of that organization. So why wouldn't they do this? And finally, the refugee team won its first medal ever. After its creation for the Rio 2016 games, the refugee team has come close, but never reached the podium in any event until Thursday. Boxer Cindy Ngomba lost in her women's 75 kilogram semifinal, but she earned a bronze medal in doing so. Ngomba, who was born in Cameroon, is gay and cannot return to her home country where homosexuality is outlawed. She is currently living in Bolton, England. Incredible story. If you're catching this episode after hearing your favorite Locked On show, make sure to subscribe to Locked On Sports Today on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts so you never miss an episode. Also, if you're a new subscriber to Locked On Sports Today, we are here for the biggest stories in sports every day. Coming up on the next Locked On Sports Today, which team is in danger of going first to worst this year in the NFL? So at least until tomorrow, stay locked on sports today.
Locked On Podcast Network presents Locked On Sports Today.
For more episodes of Locked On Sports Today, go to our video on demand. Click on Sports at the top of your screen. There, you'll find past episodes of Locked On Sports Today, plus other Locked On shows on demand.